What's up, you bunch of rats ass? It's Justin Romare here, the host of the Starving Podcast. I'd like to start by mentioning some of our sponsors today. First is GenoPalette. This is a DNA company that tests your genes and tells you what foods that you need to be eating. If you're wondering if you're lactose sensitive or maybe you don't process carbs well, this is the way to find out. With a 12-page comprehensive report, all you have to do is give a sample of your saliva, or if you have existing 23andMe or Ancestry DNA data, you're already ready to go. You just download that data. Use code CBG for $20 off your kit or to upload your data directly to the website. Our other sponsor today is X Endurance. We love this company because all of their products are third-party tested. And working with a lot of high-level athletes, we want to make sure that everything is regarded as safe. Today, actually, on the podcast, we're going to be talking about performance-enhancing drugs, or PEDs. So, if you're on X Endurance products and you're a performance athlete, you know that you can wipe the sweat off your brow and relax because everything is third-party tested, which means another facility, Informed Sport or Informed Choice, test these products for them to make sure that they're regarded as safe and nothing illegal is in them. One of our last sponsors is Performa Sleep. So Performa Sleep is actually a company that sells mattresses for athletes that want accelerated recovery. It's made without a lot of flame retardants, such as PBDEs, TDCPPs, and other flame retardants. So get those preservatives out of your bed. It's also made without formaldehyde. However, it does have copper-infused top layer, which provides cooling properties, conducting heat away from the body, and is antimicrobial. The copper also helps with sufficient joints. And this 3-layer mattress essentially is a support without sink. So if you're an athlete and you want to recover from your training sessions, or if you just want deeper sleep, definitely check out Performa Sleep. You can get $75 off with our code CBG. And our last sponsor, but not least, is Consistency Breeds Growth. Ever heard of them? Well, this company does customized nutrition. So, working with CBG, you can actually get blueprints that tell you exactly what to eat, when to eat it, and how much to eat for every meal of the day. Sounds easy, right? So definitely link up with them and give code CBG for a 15% discount when talking to one of their coaches. So today we're going to be talking about performance-enhancing drugs, and we'll also segue into the debate on transgender athletes within the sport. Please enjoy.
It's science.
Jordan, bro, you quarantined?
We're almost there, so it's gonna be really productive. So how's things on the other side of the Atlantic?
Well, it sounds like we're heading straight for the same way Italy is, I would say. It seems it's projecting to the number of cases similar to that. So I think that the U.S. is doing a decent job of, having people stay home unless they absolutely need to leave. But, they're the idiots that are running around getting drunk at the bar on Friday and Saturday nights.
It is a worldwide problem. But I know for me, I've been joking around with my friends, like if I'm going to get quarantined, I'm just going to get super shredded. I'm just going to do some intermittent fasting. I'm going to switch over to keto, and I'm going to come back like lean as hell and just ready to just slay workouts after a month off. So, see. Let's talk about performance-enhancing drugs and forget about this depressing stuff.
Yeah, we'll do a podcast on COVID-19 coming soon, but for today, we want to talk about PEDs. So people that cheat within a sport. Primarily, we work with a lot of different athletes, but the sports that we'll be talking about today are primarily CrossFit and the UFC. So these are a lot of our athletes are working in basically these sports. They're high performance athletes. So, this is what we wanted to discuss. So they're, in terms of CrossFit, they follow a ban list of PEDs under the organization of WADA. and the UFC actually uses USADA. So they're slightly different, and we're not going to go through the differences today, but we do want to talk about some of the common supplements, performance-enhancing supplements that are banned by these communities. And a number of cases have emerged in both the UFC and CrossFit over the past 10 years.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I would say that, just as a side note, CrossFit has a no tolerance policy for this. If you are tested and you have performance enhancing drugs in your system or don't cooperate with the drug testing that's being performed, you are banned from the sport. Whereas in the UFC, that's not the case. And we'll go over some of those cases and why we think that there's a difference here. So the first is, a lot of you probably already know about this performance-enhancing drug. It's anabolic androgenic steroids. So these steroids are very common, as well as Sarms, so selected androgen receptor modulators. And there is more development of these types of drugs. So they're a class of androgen receptor ligands that bind to the androgen receptor in the body. So muscle tissue has androgen receptors. So this is where the steroid, whether created in the body, because we do make our own testosterone, or exogenous testosterone or other testosterone derivatives labeled as steroids, they bind together. And essentially, once, when they bind together, they basically display tissue selective activation and androgenergic, signaling for particularly muscle growth. So this is why this is banned. A lot of people have different levels of testosterone naturally, and this, this is what you should use when you compete. You should not take exogenous testosterone. So this has been pretty common in the past decade. The big difference between steroids and Sarms is really that the Sarms are, in the name, they're more selective. So there's a lot less side effects, especially concerning the prostate for men, less prostate side effects, and a lot of the side effects of selective androgen receptor modulators are actually reversible. So, this is the mechanism by which they work and why they're banned. So, and in both sports, people are moving away from steroids and towards Sarms because of their differences in terms of side effects, and they're banned for the obvious reason. So,
yeah, they're not as, I don't think they're as prevalent as they once were. I know that these broader targeted PEDs were probably more popular when we think of, I don't know, say the West and East German weightlifting teams from the 70s and 80s. That's a nice long history lesson if you feel like going into that one. I think I associate the anabolic steroids with usually with bodybuilders and not so much with performance athletes, per speak, like CrossFitters or people who need to like move around, but more so just that very bulky sort of athlete. But they're still effective in doing their job if your job is to get as big and strong and bulky as possible. So
yeah, that's a good point. And you're gonna see it pretty prevalent in higher output anaerobic creatine phosphate system sports, and a lot of those sports is actually legal. So like bodybuilding is not a performance-based sport per se, but there are divisions in which it's legal.
Yep.
And these athletes, they take human growth hormone and steroids and Sarms to, for muscle growth. It's, there are other divisions in which it's not allowed, natural divisions, but, we commonly work with bodybuilders that come to us and they disclose what they're on. And, that's beneficial information for us for, customizing their diet through consistency breeds growth. So if it's legal within your sport, we have no, no reason to not, work with you while you're using those things. It's also pretty common in World's Strongest Man. I worked with an athlete, Rob Kearney, who's World's Strongest Man for a while, and it's legal in his sport. But in CrossFit and mixed martial arts, it's not. So you're giving yourself a competitive advantage over others who presumably tested and don't have any exogenous steroids or Sarms in their system.
Yeah,
So
it's a supplement just like anything else. I think Justin and I talked about this in a previous podcast, but I stay up pretty late at night and end up getting into these rabbit holes of bodybuilding forums, and it was pretty interesting to see the different classes of steroids and other uh, illegal performance enhancing drugs under USADA or WADA. This not only discussed openly, but used with care underneath a doctor who was actually prescribing these and saying, it's almost like that argument you have when you're a teenager with your parents, like, okay, we don't want you drinking in the house, but if you have to, you're going to do it here. It sounds really twisted, but it's different values for different sports. Yeah, it's just a different, and
Yeah.
I can respect that having people be out in the light about it versus doing things like this. And I mean, these are not easy chemicals to dose yourself. There's a lot of, it's like anything else. Like if you're taking vitamins or fish oil, like you have to know what you're doing. These just have larger and I think much more dire stakes when you take them. They can kill you. That's the long and short of it.
Right. Yeah, they can be very dangerous. The next supplement or performance enhancing drug that is banned by WADA and USADA is EPO. So, EPO is basically it gives a performance enhancing effect in the brain after an injection, which basically improves oxygen transport in the blood. So the way this works is, there are limitations in every sport that athletes work on. In CrossFit, it's either VO2 max, which is the uptake of oxygen, from the air, for example. How much volume of oxygen can you take in? And then there's, muscle saturation of oxygen and utilization of that oxygen in muscle tissue. So in this particular case, most CrossFit athletes have an issue with oxygen utilization in the muscle tissue because they're doing a lot of different activities like handstand push-ups, ring muscle-ups, you name it. And each muscle is trained differently, and therefore uses, a different amount of oxygen utilization and things like that. So EPO essentially improves the oxygen transport to muscle tissue, and it boosts the number of red blood cells, so therefore increasing the transport of oxygen to the muscles. And I would say that this is an amazing performance-enhancing drug for both CrossFit and mixed martial arts.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in mixed martial arts, they're doing 3 5-minute rounds, and if they can get oxygen transport quicker to a lot of the muscles that they use, which, if they're boxing, it's more of, in the upper body, and then when they're wrestling and they're doing other things, it's lower body. Regardless, can be extremely beneficial. And this is actually, the PED that Lance Armstrong was flagged for years
Landed it
ago.
up. He did real well on this one. Just go check.
Absolutely. Yeah. He did, absolutely. So this is why this is banned. This is the mechanism of EPO. So don't take it.
Yep.
If it's not allowed in your sport.
It's pretty easy. But there is a guy, I'm not sure which he used, but it blew up on Netflix a while ago. Icarus Justin, did you see that film? It was
I
like
don't think so. No.
it's a really good one. I suggest our listeners to check it out. But I think he might have used EPO because it's the story started out as he wanted to be just like Lance or a competitive cycler. He was already a cyclist and he just wanted to start dosing himself. And then it dovetailed into the what is it the Russian like conspiracy with their doping athletes and what they were using. But they had a really significant portion of the film dedicated to EPO, explaining Lance's position on these things and how you know you can have all the steroids you want, but if you're not good at cycling, it ain't gonna help too much. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on.
The next drugs, beta 2 agonist. So they're also known as beta blockers. So if you are at risk of, or if you have heart disease, if you're at risk for a heart attack, this is a common drug that is used. And essentially, for performance athletes that don't have heart issues, it can be extremely beneficial because it reduces heart rate, and it provides focus and steadiness. So a lot of people that do shooting and archery will use this, but other than that, it reduces the heart rate, and muscle tremor may improve performance. And then these agonists also affect smooth. The real benefit for performance athletes is the effects on smooth muscle, which causes dilation of the bronchial passages. So dilation meaning opening of the bronchial passages. And vasodilation in muscle. So opening of blood vessels. So this allows for more oxygen transport into the muscle. So not the same mechanism of EPO, but providing a similar benefit. So yeah, it's extremely beneficial. It's one of the more common things that are emerging in sports that people are taking.
I believe these are more acute too, right? Like you could take a few pills of these, like get the desired effect, and then they'll be done. It's not. It's not like it's. I believe EPO and the anabolic stuff. You need to be on the habitual, like a cycle. Whereas I think I'm not. I don't know. I could be speaking out of ignorance, but I do recall people taking beta blockers like on the acute thing. Like they have like a talk to go to, and they give the talk, take a beta, and then they're
Yeah,
done with it. Yeah. That's
like Adderall.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But instead of like boosting your
yeah,
ass through the roof, you're just like a Zen master.
yeah. It's basically like Adderall. It basically is Adderall. If you're
Oh,
not prescribed Adderall and you're on that stuff, I mean, it's a amphetamine. So
no way! I didn't know you learn something new every day. Look at that.
yeah, man, a little bit different, but yeah, you cannot. They're under this class.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, they're under this class. So, yep. So if you're not prescribed Adderall and you're on Adderall, you're gonna get flagged. So, yep, don't take it. So the next thing is hormone and metabolic modulators. So this is actually quite new. It's a newer class of drugs, and it affects the metabolism, cardiac metabolism in general. So it's widespread in the bodybuilding world and popular in other sports where strength's a factor, but it can be used for a lot of different things. It affects or makes changes in our hormones and alters enzyme reactions. So this basically affects your DNA. Your DNA makes changes, and therefore you receive benefit from this. So some metabolic modulators can suppress estrogen. So, for those of you who don't know, estrogen is it's primarily noted as the female hormone, and when estrogen is suppressed, that basically the number between testosterone and estrogen, right? That gap, benefits the growth of muscle tissue. So, they definitely affect the metabolism in that way, and you know, it's there are others that also can improve, enhance endurance and aerobic performance as well. So they do this by altering the metabolism. So these are banned. They're pretty new, so we don't have a lot of, or we don't want to go into a lot of detail on these, but there are athletes that have been popped for this. So it is is going around.
It is a
It's
concern.
going around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
The last class is diuretics and masking agents. So diuretics, basically they'll affect hormones like aldosterone, aldosterone, and others that essentially allow for the flow of water out of the body. So when you're on a diuretic, basically you can expel more water. So for athletes that need to make a weight, like in MMA, for example, this can be extremely beneficial. Some are natural, like dandelion root, for example, but others are not, and they're considered performance-enhancing drugs. Also, diuretics, they're used to get rid of traces of other drugs, and this is why they're coupled in with masking agents. And masking agents, basically the way that they work is they mask any of the following drugs that we just mentioned by either expelling them out of the body quickly, acutely, or by hiding them altogether. So this is why a lot of these masking agents are also banned. They aren't inherently providing any benefit, but they're covering up other performance-enhancing drugs that are banned.
Providing the evidence of tampering. Yeah, I was speaking to a clinician friend of mine, and we discussed like ways to cheat tests and whatnot. And I'm not sure if many of our listeners have watched the show Blue Mountain State, but there's a particular episode, I believe in season 2 or 3, where they all perform what's called an oil change, where they swap out, well, they use catheters to swap out the urine that's in their bladder with clean urine because they were all doping and doing all sorts of other things. But yeah, but this particular clinician friend of mine, she had told me like, "Yo, do you know that people do this?" And I find it disgusting. I'm like, well, it's actually been brought up a few times in popular sports culture. So, boom, there you go. In case you don't want to take drugs, you can just catheterize yourself because that's normal. So yeah.
Come on, son. Come on, son.
Hey man, I've had a
Jesus.
catheter once, and if I never go down that road again in my life, I'm good. Like legit. Like I want to be big, but I don't want to be big that bad. Hell no. Ugh.
Yeah.
So let's get into like the opinion side and just the meat and bones. So we gave you all the science stuff. You're probably like falling asleep and need to know. So now we talk about like how are these drugs being tested? When is the testing happening? And I don't know. Is it flawed? Should they be doing it in the first place? What's your take on it, Justin? Hit me with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the testing system in MMA is the fighters are tested before the fight, but they also have to provide an address where USADA can go where they are and test them at any time during the year. So if you're a UFC employee, for example, you know, you have to disclose this information to them. In terms of the CrossFit system, if you qualify through the open for the CrossFit Games, you do not have to get tested unless they randomly come out to you. Okay? So this is one flaw.
Yeah.
And we'll explain why in a second. But for a sanctioned event, it's changed a little bit. So, for basically they could test whoever won the event, not the qualifier. And this year they're actually testing who won the event and who qualified for the CrossFit Games. So if everyone before you 1, 2, 3 on the podium at Wadapalooza, but you're number 4 and you're going to CrossFit Games, you're going to get tested, even though you didn't podium. You're going to the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
So, and they do both blood tests and urine tests. So the best way for a lot of these drugs is through a blood test, and it's more expensive, but it's one of the best ways to determine the PEDs that people are on. And when you arrive at a particular event and they say they're going to drug test you, they make you stay with a person from the end of the event until you get tested, and you cannot talk or touch anyone. So this is in the CrossFit community. The problem with this is that not everyone that qualifies through the Open for the CrossFit Games is tested. So what happened actually last year is Anna Fragku, who was
She's a Greek national champion for the women, I believe.
yeah, correct. Yeah, she was the Greek national champion. She qualified through the Open. She goes through the games, places I believe ninth,
Yeah.
and then after was popped. So the issue with this, especially with the CrossFit Games, is that there were cuts made last year at every stage. So at top 50, top 40, top 30. So she continued to compete because she wasn't popped till after, but every athlete that was at the cusp, so athlete 21 when they made the top 20, athlete 31 who was supposed to be, that didn't make the cut of the top 30, were shafted because they were gonna be able to continue to compete. And this happened with one of our athletes, Emma McQuaid. She actually was 21st and didn't make the top 20 and would have if Anna was tested prior to the CrossFit Games.
That's fucking crazy.
It's wild, right?
Yeah,
So
that's it's nuts.
yeah, and a lot of the events that were left were really good for Emma, actually. Who knows? She could have went on and made the top 10 and could have podiumed. I mean, you've seen, Sarah Sigmund's daughter is someone who's on the podium, over the last, 5 years. She's been on close to the podium or on the podium. And she was just made the cusp of 20th, and Emma was 21st. So there were really good athletes that, look at Pat Vellner, Brent Fikowski, they got eliminated. So, I mean, this is...
It's also it's a monetary thing too. I mean, this is the athlete's livelihood, and not everybody, like it or not, is going to be a top 5 athlete. You're going to have people that are consistent performers. So if you have somebody that, a change from 9th to 10th place, like that affects your purse, the amount of money you're bringing home. And again, something to even make this more complicated. Like if you're coming from a country that doesn't do particularly well with sports training, and you can bring home 10,000 or 5,000 US dollars, that changeover into your local currency can be a shitload of money. And when you get screwed because somebody's, not playing fair, that can be aggravating. That's aggravating for the people who are coaching you, who are watching you, and like the glory. Like look at on that weekend, I remember watching Anna Fragku in the clean ladder. I was like, holy shit! Like she's going up against these heavy hitters. It's her first time out, and then you come to find out, you're like, oh, okay, well that was all. It could have been somebody else up there having that glory.
Right.
Like it's not fun. Okay, like your spot moves up 6 months later when they pop. It's like, no, that's bullshit. That you don't get any of that glory at the time, and you're sitting there wandering around for. Yeah, it's not fair. It's not good for the sport. And this kind of thing has happened with just about every sport. Like hell, I remember when we were younger and you had like the home run race between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. And then before that you had Jose Canseco, even Barry Bonds coming out of it later on. It's like damn, man, like guys could barely jog around the bases and just smacking the bean balls right out. So
I know. Yeah, and that was good for the sport, but it doesn't put people on the same playing field.
No.
So I want to get into some of the other athletes, and we'll go over their cases. So Emily Abbott, so she's actually, I would consider a friend of mine. I talked to her a couple of years back, and she was on Abutamorin, so it's an anabolic agent. But actually her case, she appealed that her boyfriend at the time was actually on it and she didn't know. And since it's an oral, it was passed to her in milligram amounts. And I believe that story. I believe that that's what happened. And the issue is, and what a lot of people don't understand, is this fact. And I believe that she does. If you are or have performance enhancing drugs in your system, then regardless of how they get there. I don't care if it's from a supplement. I don't care if you took them deliberately. I don't care where it's from. Doesn't matter if it's your fault or not. You didn't know. Doesn't matter. You are not allowed to compete that year. And anything subsequent with testing that you fail and you've already won something, for example, let's say you placed third at the CrossFit Games and subsequently that you get popped, that's stripped away from you because during the time that you were competing, you had exogenous PEDs in your system. It's not fair, period. That's it. Doesn't matter if it was deliberate or not, or if you didn't know or not. It sucks if it wasn't deliberate. That's horrible. And I think that there needs to be further investigation into some of these athletes to see if they're actually banned or not, or should get banned from the sport, or what their suspension should be. For me, I think everything from, example, Emily Abbott's 2018 season should be washed away. She got exogenous butyrate in her system, and it wasn't her fault. But I don't think that she should have got a 4-year ban. So this comes down to investigating what the hell is going on. You know what I mean? And trying to determine through science, an investigation, whether someone gets suspension or not and for how long. Yeah. Not a matter of whether they should be stripped of all their accolades while they're on. They should be stripped of all their accolades, period. Just how it goes.
Yeah, the length of the ban seems quite arbitrary, and I think that the reasoning behind the bans, or at least the length, there hasn't been any justification, because you have some people who are, like, I think it's an automatic 4-year ban, which so there's an argument to be made, and the bodybuilders will talk about it quite often. It's like, if you pop on steroids, that means your protocol wasn't good enough. That means your doctor, whoever was supervising you, fucked up, because if they're not, the tests that they have, they're limited, even though they're improving them. It's a constant cat and mouse game of how the new drugs are being developed and the new screening methods for them. So it's a 4-year ban for something that could be flushed out of your system in, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks once you stop everything. I mean, is it meant to be a punishment? Is it meant to destroy your career? Because that's another thing to discuss as well. Should CrossFit have the ability to destroy one person's career even though they made a mistake or intentionally took something and were caught? I think that it's a very nuanced argument that I don't have all the evidence for, or I don't know. I haven't frankly thought about it. I mean, one thing that comes to mind with me is you have a lot of weightlifters that will take this stuff, or people that used to weightlift, whatever. Justin and I used to work out together when we were closer in Brantford CrossFit, and like there'd be some people who just had a natural ability, like they have the skill of weightlifting, but they may not have the strength for it, but they just are constantly moving up. I'm not saying so that steroids and performance enhancing drugs can help with that sort of thing, but they're not going to teach the skill. The skill is something you develop on your own. It's like the other argument too, like Barry Bonds, like, okay, he hits 70 something home runs juiced up, but you got to see the ball, you got to hit the ball. What's the where's the cutoff with that? It's just something, if we're talking about performance enhancing drugs, we should at least acknowledge. That's my 3 and 4 cents.
I mean, my take is that these, like, if the sport decides that they're a list of PEDs that athletes cannot be on, and they deliberately take the PED knowing that other athletes are banned from the same PEDs they are, then they get a suspension. Yeah, they get a suspension. It's period. It's you have to do this no tolerance policy, and that's why I like what CrossFit does. They have some holes, but I like the no tolerance policy. And this is just a reality. And just to segue into how we deal with our athletes. I know everything all of my athletes are on. I know what Saxon takes. I know what Dane Smith takes, Emma McQuaid, Macy Chasson, Paige Van Zandt, all these people that we work with. I know their supplement list. I make sure everything's third-party tested. And it needs to be the job of the athlete and the coach to communicate this or to their doctor if they're prescribed something. Because you don't want any of these things coming up with you, not being deliberate and not knowing. And, the last month I talked to Emma McQuaid. She sent me, she was feeling a little bit sick, so she sent me an antihistamine. I looked it up, it's fine, right? Antihistamines are fine, but it's just good to know that we have a relationship where she can trust in me to, make sure that all of her supplements are clear and everything she's taking is clear. And you have to do this. And if you're not, you need to work with someone that knows what's going on, or talk to your doctor about this. Look up the list. It's online.
Yeah.
Some of the other athletes here, in MMA, at least TJ Dillashaw on EPO, and he admittedly, came out, and stated that he was on it. Other people deny it, and other people, for example, Andrew Gannon from Russia a couple years ago. This guy didn't care at all. He just knew he was on it. He didn't care. And I looked at his Instagram story, and he's in the dark, you don't see anything. And then a light comes on with his face. He's in his attic, and then he says, "Boo." It was, and this was the day after he got caught. So he clearly does not care that this happened.
Yeah.
Same and was on his story doing stupid stuff. It was hilarious to me. I'm like, dude, this is the guy who just knew. And he was on testosterone. He was on exogenous testosterone. So you have others like Ricky Gerard, and then his brother in 2019, Ben Gerard. They're on Testalone, which is a SARM, and then Endurabol, which is a metabolic modulator that we discussed earlier in the podcast. And that metabolic modulator, Endurabol, was taken out of clinical trials and was regarded as extremely toxic and dangerous. So you're also compromising your health with some of these things, Nate Diaz, before the baddest motherfucker title, Ligandrol, there was a metabolite of it, and he said that he was a vegan and that it was in a vegan multivitamin. What the hell is a vegan multivitamin? What the hell are you talking about? So everybody knows he's a vegan. So the UFC started to make this story oh, he's a vegan. How could he be on anything exogenous? Shut up.
Easy.
You just want the fight. Yeah, you want the fight to go on. Because it's one of the biggest fights of the year, maybe the biggest fight of the year, anticipated fights of the year, and you don't want to lose that money. You lose so much money. So what the, dude, and like I said, let's say I personally think he probably did take something. It doesn't make sense to me. It's a vegan multivitamin. That's stupid. What is a vegan? I still don't know what a vegan multivitamin is.
Yeah,
anyway,
they have even some of the other people that popped, or another criticism I have with the CrossFit, their policy is that some of these things, maybe not the more nefarious ones, but the lower class, God, I can't. I'm drawing a blank on what they are, but they have therapeutic uses. So you'll have some people that will knowingly start taking something like this because they rip their Achilles tendon off, and they're like, well, we can take something that's banned because I'm really not going to be performing this year anyway, but it might heal, but they still might have, just the way the competition season is broken down, they might test positive when they were considering starting to train again, or they had a few things like that too. Even somebody from Rich Froning's camp said they ate contaminated beef or something, and they're like, yeah, we buy all our beef from this one place, and I don't know, some other crap like that. But I do think that you should have some protocol there, or for therapeutic uses, realizing that it's much different than some guy shooting a needle in his ass to increase his deadlift by 200 kilos. Is a lot different than somebody who ripped a tendon, who whipped their quad right in half, and they want to get something to help repair.
Right.
That's one of my hot takes. So
Yeah, well, the thing is, you have the ability to disclose
yeah,
with CrossFit what's going on. So you have to do that if you're on something from your doctor and it is on the WADA list. You should disclose this to CrossFit and let them know what's going on. So this is the reality. And before you start taking it too, don't start taking it and tell them.
yeah,
Make sure that it's good. Just cover your shit, bro. Like, come on, son.
yeah.
Like, just cover your stuff. It's just,
It's nuts.
if you're a competitor, yeah, you got to take care of this stuff. And then the two athletes this year in CrossFit was Lefteris Theophanidis,
Nailed
correct?
it. Sorry.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
He's the Greek champion, but he doesn't care. It's to be announced what's going on with him. And then Alana Fisk, same thing, who, actually qualified for the CrossFit Games through Wadapalooza. But
Whoa, I didn't hear about this one.
yeah, so this just came out actually yesterday or 2 days ago. And yeah, so she said, from supplements or whatever, they're investigating, but she's going to appeal. But,
They never get the appeals anyway.
it doesn't matter. I mean, this happened to Ben Bergeron. He's one of the most famous coaches. In 2010, he got popped for, it was a beta 2 agonist.
Oh yeah.
That was in Jack 3D. Remember Jack 3D, that stuff, the pre-workout?
Oh
It was
my
in that
god.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you gotta take care of your stuff, bro. Like,
Stop taking those gimmicky pre-workouts for one.
right. This is why all of our
Jack 3D.
athletes, all of our athletes are on third-party tested stuff or stuff that we know regarded as safe. This is, one of the main reasons that we use X Endurance
Yeah.
for a lot of, our athletes, because they are regarded as third-party tested, and we know that they're safe, and something like this is not going to come up. So that's my take on some of these athletes that have been caught. And this is just to highlight the cases and what's going on. It's not to throw shade at these athletes that are probably all devastated, whether they took the stuff deliberately or not, that they can't compete. For some of them that got away with it, where money's involved, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But
It's a conversation that needs to be had either way.
regardless. So
I think the last part we wanted to cover were some people. Justin and I have talked at length in various other podcasts about different differential genetic expression of both hormones in general and testosterone and estrogen. And we just want to briefly mention, I just need to check her name again, the Olympian Caster Semenya. And I know I'm pretty interested in this case just to see. It's a hot button issue. I believe this athlete I think she's a woman, and she identifies as such, but she has a much naturally higher expression of testosterone. And so at least some of the articles I've been able to gather were saying that because of this higher level that they wanted her to take drugs to dampen that, to sort of bring her more in line with other female athletes' expression of testosterone within their blood. So this is something that's pretty darn heavy, I would say. Just Just you wanna weigh on this one?
yeah, and this segues into the transgender debate, which goes on. It's a tough topic. It's I believe that if she naturally has higher testosterone levels and is not on any exogenous testosterone, that she should be allowed to compete with women.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just think that it's discriminatory any other way. That's it. I really don't have anything else to say about that. Biologically, she hit the genetic lottery and she competes with women, and she is a woman. Boom. That's it. And the fact that they're making her suppress things by taking drugs that are going to make her less of who she is, according to her genetic material, and decrease her performance makes absolutely no sense to me. in regards to the transgender debate, I mean, CrossFit in the rule book that's been updated for 2020 are still allowing transgender athletes to compete. And this goes for in the long-lasting debate of transgender, men. So being able to compete with females if they identify with females. So, this gender dysphoria, in terms of competition, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a more serious discussion about this, and I think there's been many within the transgender community have said that they want their own division, and I really think that things like this should be constructive for them, because I don't necessarily think it fair for a man, somebody who was born a biological male, to then transition and compete with women. You've had call it what you like. You've had a series of biological reactions that for 20 or 30 years or however long, especially if you've gone through male adolescence, that your body just develops in a substantially different way than that of a woman. And I believe it's well within your right to identify whichever way you feel like it. But if you're going to compete with something where the idea in physical competition is to see who is the strongest or the fastest or the most keen at their sport, it is an advantage. And I just think that's the long and short of it. I don't think that there's, and this is something I've discussed with some other clinician friends of mine. You don't see, at the risk of sounding insensitive, you don't see many biological women, females, who have transitioned to become men, and then they go and start competing with other men. Or maybe that's just my own ignorance and I haven't seen that, but
I mean, it certainly it happens, but they aren't. You don't hear them taking titles away.
True.
And it just shows on both sides that exogenous hormones can only do so much.
Yeah.
So it's an emotionally charged topic, but being male after puberty essentially increases satellite number and fused micronuclei in muscle tissue.
Yeah.
Okay. And this provides a permanent advantage. Permanent. Does not matter. So when they go to compete with females, they were born a biological male, all right, but they identify as a female. Anywhere, they have this permanent advantage. And another factor here is the fact that, they had natural testosterone for multiple years of their life. There's no turning this back.
Yeah.
Right? Like our hormones affect our epigenetics, which is our DNA, right? And this is long lasting. So it's the same like with the way that you eat food as a young adult dictates whether you're going to be more predisposed for diabetes or anything later in life, regardless of how well you eat when you're a grown up. It doesn't matter. You've changed your DNA profile based on your environment. And the environment of a biological male is higher testosterone, and that happens for multiple years. They cannot then go over and compete with females. It's not fair. And basically, anywhere from 40 to 60% of an advantage has been shown, whereas taking drugs only decreases people's percentages, let's say in weightlifting, by like 10 to 15%. So take Taylor Atwood, for example, 74 kg world champion in powerlifting, could lose 15% off his totals and would still win the 72 kg women's world championship by hundreds of pounds over the nearest challenger. How? Like, how is that? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And then also think about, biological male, okay, on testosterone, starts taking estrogen, okay, to, provide exogenous hormones to start to give the representative body of a female of which they identify. Estrogen actually, one reason that a lot of women lose bone density later in life has to do with the lack of estrogen.
Yeah.
Okay. So not only do they have the benefits of 20 years of testosterone, they're also preserving bone density. when they start taking exogenous estrogen, right? So like all of these different advantages, and this is not discriminatory. I believe that every person in the world, male, female, unidentified, should be allowed to compete in some capacity. And I think it's just going to take a really long time to get people to a point where they're going to be allowed to compete with transgender males with another transgender male, and the competitive level is elevated, right?
Yeah.
Right now, there aren't enough transgender males and females being identified, and therefore, it's just a small number of competitors that right now some want the transgender male that to compete with females, but that shouldn't be the case. It just shouldn't be the case. It's not the case. It shouldn't be the case. And I do disagree with CrossFit's rule on this. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah. I think they're going to have to go through a period that they just because of the growth of the sport has been exponential the last couple of years, that they're going to have to reevaluate some things that mean to them. And I think start to embrace their community even more. And that happens no matter who or what you identify as, because at the end of the day, it's all about being a healthy person. So that's my nice little bow on that. So Jess, I think we should wrap this one up. We're going to put these people to bed otherwise. So.
All right, son. All right. So yeah, definitely, hit us up on consistencybreedsgrowth.com or thestarvingpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to email us, find all our sponsors in the show notes. Use code CBG for a number of different discounts and dollars off. I know you guys can use that money with the economy down right now. So, yep. So if you have any questions, let us know. Next podcast, COVID-19, get ready.
Get ready. We got all this. You gotta keep us busy here. All these quarantine zones from your lovely man in charge over here, holding it down in Prague.
Later. Peace out.
We'll see you guys soon.
Science.